Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. It's the brother Bayan here to bring you a quick lesson. Prior to getting started, I want to give infinite honors and prayers unto Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rakagwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the hopefully elect. You Akim, you Akwat, with you brothers and sisters in the Hebrew that believe. All right, and again, shalom. All right, and for this lesson here is going to be a continuation of the series I'm doing, back to the basics. All right, and for this episode 3 or whatever, whatever it's labeled, it's going to be, how to prove you're Israelite. All right, because obviously that's something that you have to know. All right, this is your history, Jake. So if you can't prove to somebody that you're Israelite, are you really an Israelite? Which the answer up to that, obviously can be yes, but being in this truth, man, you have to, know how to at least prove it, So I'm gonna jump into some basic scriptures, for people that's new to this, or just some brothers that just need some precepts, to sharpen themselves up, But I'm gonna kick it off with the book of Numbers, all right, which is this is one of the more simple ways to go about, because it pretty much goes through the lineage of your father. All right, that's how you can prove that you are Israelite. Everything that the Lord deals with, it deals with the man first. Okay. Where am I? Numbers chapter 1 and 17. All right. I'm gonna start at 16. All right. These were the renowned of the congregation, princes of the tribes of their fathers, heads of thousands in Israel. And Moses and Aaron took these men, which are expressed by their names, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families, by the house of their fathers, all right, according to the number of the names from their 20 years old and upward by their polls. Okay, so Moses and Aaron are here, taking a poll, as it says, all right, of the 12 tribes, okay. But in order to keep everything in order, everybody had to come up and be separated, pretty much through who your father was. All right, so if your father was a Benjamite, you're a Benjamite. All right, I'm the son of such and such. He's a Judite, so you're a Judite. And so on and so forth. Something real simple. That everybody should know. All right, but as easy and simple as we think this is, Jake still finds some type of way to feel emotional or get emotional about this, because they're going to ask, what about the women? All right. And in this case right here, man, when it comes to your nationality, the woman does not matter. Okay. And it's crazy that will cause so much of an uproar. Well, it's not crazy here in this kingdom, because this is a kingdom that's full of woman worship. All right, so the woman always has to have that pedestal above the man here. All right, so it'll come off as nonsense. And again, I'm speaking off experience. Coming into the truth. You want to tell everybody about this, and when you start telling certain people about these things, Jake finds some type of way to get emotional and say, "Oh, my mama don't matter." You telling me that the woman don't matter in this case, but the answer to that is no, she don't matter. All right, Jake, you could have come out in with any type of other woman that your father had dealt with. If the Lord appointed you to be born, all right, you're going to be born. It doesn't matter if your mom was an Asian, a so-called Asian, was a so-called African, or so on and so forth, an Edomite. Yeah, you may come out looking a little different because you're mingled with another nation, but at the end of the day, the seed of the father is what truly matters. Okay. And let me grab that word pedigree real quick in a blue letter. This is Numbers 1 and 18. This is Strong's H3205.
Strong's H3205. Yalad. Yalad.
All right. To bear, bring forth, beget. Let me see the stress call. The more simple definition is down in the letter G. It says to declare one's birth. All right, your pedigree. All right, so you're declaring your birth, through your father. All right, they have this thing in the world called husbandry. All right, which is planting a seed into the soil. Okay, so brothers always bring out this analogy. You can plant an apple seed in any type of soil. All right, and the apple seed is still going to grow out. All right, just because you grew a apple seed is not going to change what that seed is. If this soil just happens to be over here in another land, all right, doesn't mean that that this apple is going to become apple and mixed with orange. All right, that mixed shit is pretty much just confusion. That's something that Esau Edom brought up in this damn world, man. So Jake liked to go far beyond with this shit, talking about I'm 10% Irish, I'm 40% Italian, and this and that and the third. Everybody wants to be exotic. Everybody wants to be special in that type of way. But no such thing as mixed. You're not mixed with anything. All right. Either you're one of the 12 nations of Israel. All right. One of the 12 tribes of Israel. All right. Or you're of the heathen. Pretty much plain and simple, man. All right. Can't get around it. Okay. But all right, that was Numbers. All right. And I mentioned also a point too, of the Lord dealing with men. All right. Just to debunk that woman worship shit, man. Because again, everything has to be done decently in order. All right. The Lord deals with everything decently in order. So we know the hierarchy of this thing is Yahweh Shai, the man, the Israelite man, and the Israelite woman. All right. So it's again a hierarchy. All right. You can't skip this just to get all the way, to whatever you want it to be. All right. It has to be in order, because if it's not in order, it's going to be ultimately confusion. All right. But this is the book of Revelation, chapter 21 and 3. It says straight to the point. It says, and I heard a great voice out of the heavens saying, behold, the tabernacle of God, of Yahweh Bashim Shai, is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself should be with them and be their power. Okay, and that's plain, man. All right, the Lord's tabernacle is with men. All right, so if it's dealing with the pedigree, where your birth, your pedigree goes through your father. All right, but this point right here in the Revelation 21 was just pretty much letting the Lord doesn't deal, with the woman directly as he deal with the men. All right, obviously the Lord controls everything on a board, but again, it's levels to this thing, man. All right, so the Lord deals with his men first. Okay. So I got that. I'm gonna jump to the book of Baruch. Baruch got some smoke in it, pretty much letting you know another way, that you can prove that you're an Israelite. You just have to align up the curses. All right. That's one of the more simple ways to do it too. Going to Deuteronomy, which I have a couple of those precepts as well. Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, to be specific. Check out the curses and see, who is it talking about. All right. It's damn sure not no Esau Edom. It's not talking about all these other nations. But before I jump the gun, let me jump in this to the Baruch. All right, this is the book of Baruch, chapter 1, verse 17. All right, it says, for we have sinned before the Lord and disobeyed him, and have not hearkened unto the voice of the Lord our power to walk in the commandments that he gave us openly. All right. It's going to furthermore go, speaking of Moses too, which, again, I was about to jump the gun. But it says, since the day that the Lord brought out our forefathers out of the land of Egypt unto this present day, we have been disobedient unto the Lord our power, and we have been negligent in not hearing his voice. All right. Wherefore the evils cleaved unto us, and the curse which the Lord appointed by Moses, his servant, at the time he brought our fathers out of the land of Egypt, to give us a land that floweth with milk and honey, like as it is to see today. All right. And again, it's two things that you have to notice that was being said here in this Baruch. Okay. So it's speaking of the law, statutes, commandments that were given. All right. So who was given the law, statutes, commandments? All right. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans only. All right. The Israelites of the true Israelites of the Bible, of the scriptures. All right. But it talks about here in verse 20, wherefore the evils cleaved unto us, and the curse which the Lord appointed by Moses. All right. So again, if you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28, all right, verses 1 through 15, that's the blessings. All right. Or 1 through 14. I forget, it's either one of those two. 1 and 14, I believe. Let me just make sure just in case. And then I think 15 to like 64 or 68. Just so I clarify this real quick. The blessings are Deuteronomy 28 to 14, all right? From Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 through 14 are the blessings, all right? And from Deuteronomy 28 and 15 all the way to 68, okay, is the curses that were going to be put upon us, all right? But as I said again in Baruch chapter 1, verse, let me get back to it. Baruch chapter 1 and 20, it says, wherefore the evils cleaved unto us, and the curse which the Lord appointed by Moses, his servant, at the time that he brought our fathers out of the land of Egypt, to give us a land that floweth with milk and honey, like as it is to see this day. Nevertheless, we have not hearkened unto the voice of the Lord our power, according to all the words of the prophets whom he sent unto us, but every man followed the imagination of his own wicked heart, to serve strange gods and to do evil in the sight of the Lord our power. All right. But again, those curses, all right, those curses are a huge, factor in, a point that, you have to look at, in order to see if you're Israelite or not. All right. And let's go ahead and jump to that real quick, since I keep on speaking about it. All right, this is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. And I'm not about to read this whole thing, so don't worry about that. But let's just get to the point. Deuteronomy 28 and 45. All right, it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. All right, it's repeating the same thing. Okay, and it says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder upon the, and they should be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. All right, so again, it's going to be a clear-cut sign, who his people is, because they're going to have these curses on them. All right, and let's get what some of these curses are. All right. It says, because thou servest, Deuteronomy 28 and 47, because thou servest not the Lord thy power with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. All right. A yoke of iron. All right. So if we're talking about serving our enemies, all right, in their land, all right, in the land, so like in the land, that we don't know too much about, all right, it talks about having a yoke of iron on our necks, all right, and I believe in Baruch too, it talks about a language, and swifter than the eagle. Let me just finish reading this, and then my bad. I'm mixing both of these together. This is in Deuteronomy, but I know they got some also in Baruch chapter 3. But it says, let me continue. Deuteronomy 28 and yeah, I read 48, 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. That's what I was trying to get to. All right, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. All right, and come on, man, we already know that that's talking about the slavery here in America. All right, it says, shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as an eagle. You know, ironically, you know, what's the nation's bird here in America? The American eagle. All right, flieth a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. All right, you know, we were taught, well, at least I was taught. I don't know what the school system, you know, speaks about with slavery now, but you know, we already knew that they beat the shit out of us. All right, they beat our language out of us. All right, they beat damn near everything out of us. You know, and again, we didn't understand these devils. Okay. It says, the nations of fierce countenance, which shall not regard thy person of the old, nor show favor to the young. All right. And that's pretty much the gruesomeness of what was going on through slavery. All right. These devils, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, had no mercy on us, man. All right. No regard for the person old, nor show favor to the young. All right. Down here in Louisiana and in New Orleans, all right, we know about, you know, how they were using our babies as alligator bait. All right. And the old people, come on, man. You know, it really didn't matter. All from old to middle age to young, man. We were just completely destroyed. All right. Ultimately, you know, through our disobedience to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, but, you know, Esau Edom was that whipping stick, you know, that put that hurt on us. All right. But again, you know, how you can go through this Deuteronomy 28 and catch these curses, read these curses and say, all right, this is speaking about slavery. All right, we all know about slavery. So again, something about these slaves that came here in America, all right, these have to be the people. These have to be the Lord's chosen people. All right, and boom, that's another way that you can prove that you are Israelite. All right, go through the curses and you know, align, you know, history with the curses, all right, and everything will fall in place. All right, but that's that. Let me jump into that Baruch, what I was talking about. Jump back to the Baruch. Baruch chapter 3. Baruch chapter 3, verse 8. It says, behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us, for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments, according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord our power. All right. Hear, Israel, the commandments of life, give ear to understand wisdom. How happened it, Israel, that thou art in thine enemy's land, that thou art waxing old in a strange country, that thou art defiled with the dead? All right, that thou art counted with them that go down into the grave. Thou hast forsaken the fountain of wisdom. All right, we've forsaken Yahweh by Shem Yahushua, man. All right, so us, again, departing from the Lord. All right, again, what it says in 10, that we are in thine enemies, that thou art in thine enemy's land, and thou art waxing old in a strange country, that are defiled with the dead. All right, we are yet this day in our captivity, man. All right, subject to payments here in America. Okay. Verse 13 says, for if thou hadst walked in the way of God, thou should have dwelled in peace forever. All right, Deuteronomy 1 through 14, if we would have listened. All right. That was pretty much it on that. But again, you know, one of the main points being, you know, which the whole couple of precepts I read, verse 8 through 12, Slagi, Baruch chapter 3 and 8, all the way down to 13, you know, all of these being great points. But, you know, one of the things that resonate here is, behold, we are yet this day in our captivity. All right. We know that we're not free. You know, right now we're not, physical. I forget how it's worded, but we're corporate slaves now. All right. We're not in the fields no more, picking cotton, but we're corporate slaves, subject to payments. Okay. Under this goddamn devil, man. But let me see what else I have. Boom. Yeah, this should have came out after the Deuteronomy. Baruch 4 and 14. Baruch got a lot of smoke, man. Let you know about, the bullshit that was happening to us, for us disobeying Yahweh Shem Yahushai. All right, but it says Baruch 4 and 14, let them that dwell about Zion come and remember ye the captivity of my sons and daughters, which the everlasting hath brought upon them. Again, the Lord brought this upon us because we disobeyed. Okay, it says, for he hath brought a nation upon them from afar, a shameless nation of a strange language, who neither reverence old man nor pity child. That's the one I was kind of mixing up with Deuteronomy, but again, they go hand in hand. But it says, for he hath brought a nation upon them from afar, a shameless nation. All right, what Job say, man, he wouldn't even let these damn devils be near his dog. All right, these are some freaks, man. The physical counterpart of Satan. But it says, these have carried away the dear beloved children of the widow and left her that was alone, desolate, without daughters. All right. These damn devils, man, they did a number on us, man. They definitely did. But again, if this resonates with your spirit, if this resonates with your history of being a so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, through all of this blood of our blood that was spilled here in this country, man. All right. That's how you can align yourself to know if you're an Israelite or not. All right. But, it can get, deeper, more, how can I say, one of the not so simple ways, this is obviously simple because you could go through history and read, one of the not so simple ways, but can be simple if you have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, all right, is pretty much being testing somebody's spirit, all right, seeing again if these things resonate, all right. That's another way to prove if you're Israelite or not, all right, because again, we know that since we've mingled around with all of these other nations, that some of our features look like the other nations, all right. They have full-blown Japanese men that look full-blown Japanese that might be 100% Jake, and vice versa. Might look like a plain Edomite, a so-called white man. So like him. Might look like a so-called white man completely, all right, but is an Israelite, a Israelite indeed, all right. And it's all just, again, through the dealing with other nations. One of the best examples is Drake, all right. We know how Drake's father looks, a dark-skinned man. Drake is light-skinned because his dark-skinned father dealt with a white woman, all right? And so now Drake deals with a white woman, and he has a blonde-haired, blue-eyed son, that damn near looks like, you can see that he's light-skinned, but he's on that very, very light skin, all right? But what would happen if he continues to deal with white women, all right? That skin color is going to get brighter and brighter and brighter, and if the Lord allowed this place to continue, they will have a whole goddamn color. I can't even think of it. The coloring box, full of shades, different colors and shades and shit, man. But let me grab that real quick. Speaking of the spirit, because everything is tried by the spirit. Just in case if brothers need this ammo right here. This is 1 John. And I'll probably end it off with this one. All right, it says 1 John 4 in 1 John 4 and 1. It says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of Yahweh by Shem Shai, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." All right. "Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Yahweh Shai Mashiach is come in the flesh is of God." All right. "And every spirit that confesseth not that Yahweh Shai Mashiach is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that the spirit of the Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and ye even now already is in the world." All right. And the Antichrist just means, anti-Hamashiach, anti, they're against the Lord, pretty much. All right. There's many Antichrists here. All right. It's not just one, that the church speaks about, that we're just looking for this one Antichrist that's just about to come and try to do damage to the world. It's many. Even some of our people are anti, Yahweh Shem Shai. Some of you dumbass Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you 2/3 specifically, who I'm speaking about, who are anti, Yahweh Shem Shai. All right, but the mercy that the Lord is going to have on them, is going to get their mind right, But that's going to have to come through death by pain. All right, but again, the point being here, let me read it again. "Believe not every spirit, but try the spirits." All right. So again, you have to see if this thing resonate, with people. If you can't do the physical research, all right, which is again part of the curses that is put upon us. A lot of us don't have that memory or have the connection with our family members to go through the bloodline of our father. All right, to figure out where we actually from. I myself, my years being here on this earth, I thought I was a Negro, a so-called Negro. I thought I would have been of the tribe of Judah, which is still a chance, but through the research that my family did, coming to find out that my grandfather's father, either my grandfather's father or my grandfather's grandfather, one of those two, goes back to Honduras. So that would make me a Zebulonite, But again, through majority of my life, being around Judah so much, I thought I was a Judite just like them. I got the texture of the hair, got the brown, dark skin, or what, not dark skin, but brown skin, the complexion, But again, if my family really didn't do that research, would have never known. All right. But going through the bloodline of my father, my father's father, my grandfather, and finding, this information, it aligns with the scriptures, man, But again, if you didn't have this, especially something like on a block where, people don't have this information, you just have to pretty much see if this word resonates with them. All right. If this word resonates, they agree with it 100%, it's a chance. I'm not going to say that, hey, it's 100% chance that you are, but if it resonates with you, that's a sign. All right. But I think that was pretty much it, so harping on, some points that, the way I would take it, brothers may have different routes, of how to prove that you're an Israelite. But to me, these precepts that I brought out are the most simple ways that I would like to go about. So again, that's my playbook of how to prove that you're an Israelite, So I pray that this lesson was edifying, definitely some milk scriptures. Again, back to the basics, something that we're supposed to know, Coming into this truth, being a man of the Lord, you have to know your history, man. All right. You have to know how to prove that you're an Israelite. All right. But I think the point was made, and I pray that this lesson was edifying. Prior to getting out of here, I want to give infinite honors and prayers unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kagodash, double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, you Akim and you Akwat, which is your brothers and sisters in the Hebrew that believe. Shalom.